Moth and Flames, ready, boss. Adam, what's boss stand for?
BOSS stands for Battlefield Operations Scenario Simulator.
Nice. And that's what we're in. It's a multi-user environment where we can view flight data and real terrain data all at once. How does this multiplayer work, Carl?
Yeah, so we're using Normcore as our multiplayer framework, and that allows us to sync our VR avatars. And you'll also notice that we're able to hear each other in real time with voice too.
Cool. We're also using some fancy interaction framework that lets us move around. What's that?
Yeah, so that's VRIF, VR Interaction Framework. It comes with a host of interactable components to include teleporting and grabbing and gripping objects as well. Um, that's an asset.
Cool. Hey, this is a really cool table you've got here, Adam. What's going on with it?
Yeah, so we're reading Mapbox data and terrain data. We're displaying that on 3D mesh tiles to include the terrain. If you look at the mountains closely, you can see that. Um, so we have the entire island of Oahu. We can load basically infinite terrain, and we use a kind of an infinite scroll strategy to where if you move past a certain amount of terrain, those tiles fall off, and new tiles show up as you need them.
Cool. Um, I also see like a tiny airplane here. What's going on with this tiny airplane here?
Yeah, there's a few planes. We have flight data that's literally being imported from DCS, which is a simulation framework that a lot of people fly like dogfighting missions or other combat missions in. We import that data and then we bring it into Unity and we can show it to you in full 3D space in real time for multiple objects.
So with that flight data, we're actually importing it in a fancy way that would allow us not just to use the flight of the single aircraft that came in, but would allow us to change the aircraft type that we're flying, or even to alter the mission even after it's been recorded. And I'll get into a little bit more detail on that later.
Yep.
Carl, you worked on this timeline scrubber, but Adam's in control of the video. So Adam, can you show us what's going on with this timeline thing?
Yeah, so Carl made this really awesome timeline scrubber. It works exactly like you would expect a video playback to work, but this time it's actual 3D objects in actual 3D space. So if we hit play, you'll notice the planes start moving around. Now, the planes here are obviously a little bit bigger than in real life because, for visibility's sake, we can see them over the entire island of Oahu. But if you wanted to jump to a specific part of the flight data to get, a very specific interaction, like whenever this missile hits or something, you can scrub to exactly when that takes place, much like you would a video player, and then you can jump into the action from here into the aircraft itself.
Wanted to briefly cover our technique for importing flight data. Normal flight data comes in a ACMI format, which is multiple times a second reading out throttle position and position vol control surfaces. And it's very specific to the single aircraft that's being used. We want to have the ability to switch the aircraft that we're using. So we convert this ACMI data into positional data once per second for where the aircraft is. We use that positional data to generate waypoints for a route for the aircraft to fly. Here we have about 20 minutes of flight inside of DCS that we've exported and converted here. Now we use these waypoints and we fly a AI aircraft around these waypoints, which means that we can have the same flight but change the characteristics of the aircraft that is flying that flight. And then if we want to make any alterations to the route or other details of the flight, we can do that by modifying the aircraft or modifying sections of that flight in real time. Then to export this flight data into something that we want to visualize in the rest of our app, we fly our AI aircraft and we can record the not only position data, but also the movement of the control surfaces to perform that flight. So this gives us a lot of flexibility in picking the aircraft that we want, as well as the situation that we want the aircraft to be in. In some cases, we'd like to record our own flight data with an arbitrary aircraft configuration and fly against other aircraft that have been previously recorded. So I have against our stick control for this aircraft, and I'm flying against real flight data that was already previously recorded. So this is AI flights that were flown following real flight data and saved, and now I can fly against them here.
Here is the tactical map. It's on this podium, so we can kind of walk around and get a better bird's eye view of what's going on. You'll notice there's actual terrain and elevation data that you can see. And there's also planes on the battlefield. So we can play those animations at real time to get our flight data and look at the interaction of all the aircraft at the same time. Or if we want to scrub to a very specific part of the flight data, we can get a better view of that exactly when we want to. And we can fast forward and rewind and figure out what the best time to look at the cockpit is. So once we want to go inside the cockpit, we can select an aircraft. Notice my reticle changes to the aircraft, and I can literally teleport onto the aircraft. So now we'll teleport, and the next clip you'll see will be us inside of the cockpit.
So now I'm inside the F-15 in full size. I can view the same terrain data that I was looking at before, and I can see the other aircraft flying around.